All right, everybody, we are live. We are live and going strong here. Excited for all the coming today. Go ahead and put in the notes because it's going to take me probably a minute to see it, anyways. But go ahead and put in some comments here. Just say where you're from, who you are. Just to know, I know that there's several of you already on. I know you're probably on through like YouTube. Looks like Facebook is also patched in, or if you're even coming in direct through the link. Excited to have you here. So definitely welcome. Excited to have you on today, especially because I'm going to talk about my favorite topic, which is passive income, right? I love it because I had to buy a shirt that says it. Amy from Nibley. I don't know if that's Nibley. I think that's Utah or is that Idaho? I'm not sure. But welcome. Josh from Utah. There's no one. There's CJ from Cali. Dr. CJ, good to see you as well. Great to have you guys tuning in. I see there's several more of you coming in as well. So anyways, I'm not going to dilly dally too much because I really want to get into this about how can passive income really transform your life. I know I've done other master classes about this subject, but I wanted to really put more thought and intention into this and really come from the standpoint you're in because I'm talking to you, right? Like if you're somebody who, if you've ever been somebody that has been sacrificing and saving your entire life, and maybe you've been taught this at least, right? Maybe you've been doing it, maybe you haven't been. But if you've been taught that you have to sacrifice and save and just spend nothing, right? And just have your entire life suck almost so that you can set it and forget it. You can pay off all your debt. And then someday, if you just do what everything your financial advisor tells you to do, you're supposed to be free. But despite all that and hearing that advice over and over, you kind of feel like there's something not quite right. Maybe something not adding up. You wonder if there's maybe something more you could be doing. Well, then that's what we're talking about today, right? Because I can tell you from my story, and I'll tell you that in a second. But from firsthand experience, you can do it much faster than that. Work hard, work your 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 job, depending on what you're doing, sacrificing and saving for so many years, working so hard, really bypassing all that time you could be spending with your family to then just work and save up money. And then hopefully someday you have something. And so if you feel like there's something more than that, and you want to do it faster without having to sacrifice and work hard for the rest of your life, and then only to find out you just barely get by in retirement. So your olden years are not very golden years. And then you, of course, you don't want to have to gamble your money away and possibly lose in the stock market, meaning you have to work longer. If you want to do something that's different, right, where you have passive income coming in, like my clients and I have already done for ourselves, then this is what I'm going to talk about today. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about where you can find the money to invest because a lot of times people say, well, which money do I use? What is it, just retirement money? Or is there something else I can do? Maybe money I didn't even know about. Yes, we're going to talk about that today. What are my favorite investments that your financial advisor doesn't want you to know? Yes, believe it or not, financial advisors are actually not financial experts. And also, so you know, financial advisors don't always have your best interest at heart. Again, they're good people for the vast majority of them, but they're still restricted to what they can offer you. And they are regulated by, sadly enough, financial institutions that tell them what they can tell you. And so it's kind of like the pharmaceutical industry's grip over the medical industry, right? It's like all of a sudden you feel like you're being heavily medicated. Why? Because they're the ones that pay all the money to the politicians to then create the rules that the medical professionals run by. That's the same thing in the financial world. Billions of dollars by these financial institutions. I want you to put money with them. And so therefore, the financial advisors, as well-intentioned as they are, bless their hearts, they're selling you a bill of goods. And I'm going to talk about what it takes to become financially free in the next 7 to 10 years, legitimately. Now, I want to put this meme in here because obviously, like a lot of times you hear people talk about passive income. There's a lot of crap that goes with it, right? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, sometimes they're trying to sell you their next ebook or some course they're trying to do or anything like that. I'll tell you, there's a course I'm offering, but it's not about passive income. But I'm going to talk about that too. Yes, Danielle, thank you for putting that in the comments here. Frankie, welcome from South Carolina. But Danielle, also, yes, thank you. Any question you have, you can definitely put them in the chat. I will be answering them sometimes throughout, but also at the end as well. So feel free to do so. So again, I'm not here to shove you and sell you into all these kind of stupid, pie in the sky. When we talk about doing this much faster, we're not talking about get rich quick. This is not get rich quick type of stuff. And it does require time, but like I said, it doesn't have to require decades and decades and decades of your life. This could be something that happens within a decade if done right. And no, I'm not talking about doing, passive income, making money while you sleep by literally having people interrupt you while you sleep and they get paid money for that. No, That's not what we're talking about. When Warren Buffett says, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. And no, it's not going to be something that's talking about passive income where you have to work 12 hours a day. What drives me nuts is you got guys out there. I mean, even friends, some of our friends of mine in the influencer space, but sometimes you get misled to believing that, maybe it's real estate investing based, right? And they'll say, I took $200 to make 1 million and I did only in 90 days, right? You hear that kind of crap out there. And yes, sometimes there could be truth, although sometimes there are just blatant lies. But even if there's truth to that, it wasn't because they did it passively. They worked their freaking tails off. They had to have a lot of knowledge and expertise to do what they did to create it. By the way, I don't know any friends have said they took $200 to make a million in 3 months. Although if you watch Secret Billionaire, some do, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. Now, this is the one that drives me nuts too. They'll say, they'll try to sell you on why you need to have a side hustle and have a side hustle course, right? So they'll say, hey, you just have to go and start a side hustle. And that side hustle is what makes you enough money to then do investments. And then your investments can help pay for your 9 to 5. Wouldn't it be better if we just cut out the whole side hustle thing? I mean, I'm not opposed to somebody doing a side hustle, but why would you have to work a 9 to 5 job and work overtime hours to then just have enough money to invest? That to me sounds like you're losing a lot of your life, a lot of your time that could be spent with family, right? Now, here's something you can do that is free. On our website, moneyripples.com, you can go to our passive income calculator. You can actually go try that out, especially if you have money sitting around doing nothing, right? So if you got a lot of money in savings, especially if you're talking about 6 figures of money, 100,000, 200,000 or more sitting around, try this calculator out. You can actually see pretty accurately how much passive income you could create in your situation. And I'll bring this up again later too. All right, now here is the thing. Most of these people in the financial space don't get it, or they don't want you to get it. You got guys like Dave Ramsey telling you to pay off all your debt and then save up every dime you can, put it in mutual funds, and then somehow you're going to be free. Here's the crazy thing. Why didn't Dave Ramsey do that? Because here's the thing. Dave Ramsey made money from one, his business, and he made hundreds of millions of dollars in that business. And then two, he bought hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate. He did that. That's what got him rich. By the way, his stock market portfolio stinks. Susie Orman, did you know that Susie Orman, although she preaches putting money in your 401k all the time and getting your match, do you know she doesn't do that? Did you know that actually Susie Orman only has 4% of her net worth in the stock market? But that's where she tells you to put it, doesn't she? So she doesn't. She has actually more real estate than she has stock market investments. So does Dave Ramsey. So why are we following their advice by doing the things that they say to do? It's like a bad parent that says, well, do what I say, not what I do, right? What a hypocrite. That's what the whole financial world is like. And I'll tell you, I learned this firsthand because, although I was, raised by good parents, taught me good values, I didn't know a lot about money and investing. Now, as I came out of college, I knew that I wanted to do something with business because I knew there was real freedom if I could have a business. In fact, I was planning to become a business consultant. Therefore, I figured I better have business experience before telling people how to run their business. Well, the first business I had was actually becoming a financial advisor. Now, this inspired me because when the very first time I saw this, I got interviewed for it, I thought of my dad. See, my dad worked his freaking tail off for years. This guy was so cheap that this guy buys in bulk, had bought, I should say, maybe not anymore, but had, when we were kids, bought in bulk cereal, right? I mean, I ate Fruity Pebbles for an entire year because he got the case lot sale where all the boxes were for sale. They were probably past poll date too, which is why I was for sale. Now I think about it. Captain Crunch, I probably, kid you not, I probably have scars on the roof of my mouth from a year's worth of Captain Crunch, right? All because it was on sale. My dad was like the super saver, right? Wanted to be as frugal as he could. He says frugal, we said cheap. And then save it all up to hopefully have something someday. Here's the thing though, after I was a financial advisor for 4 years, my dad said, well, when are you going to financially advise me? So I sat down with him the first time and he opened up his books, all of his finances and everything. He had paid off his house and all of his debt. He paid off his house in 18 years. He was so proud of it because that was a big accomplishment, right? He did that. He'd also saved money in his 401ks for years and years and got his match and everything. Yet, despite all that, I had to tell him, I said, Dad, you're 61 years old. If you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years because that's when you'll run out of money. Now, this guy had done everything right, everything that I bet you that my dad probably taught Dave Ramsey everything Dave Ramsey knows, right? Because my dad's a lot older than he is. He actually was doing the very things that he preaches, but it hadn't worked for him. It wasn't enough. He had to work more into his 70s. And this bugged me because, When he said, well, is there something else I could do? I said, well, I could put you in this stock thing or this thing. But then I thought, this is my dad's money. What if he loses it right before he needs it? That wouldn't be good. And I found this dilemma because it wasn't just him that wasn't free. It was me. I was trying to do the same thing he was doing. I was following the same path as him, trying to be that super saver, turn off the AC in the summer, turn off the heat in the winter, just to save a few bucks so I can stuff money away in my mutual funds. And maybe I can be 40 years old and retired at 5,000 bucks a month of income from my investments. That, by the way, I thought that was being rich back in those days. And so that was my dream, right? And here I am looking at my future as I look at my dad's situation saying, it's not working. Even worse, a few weeks later, I'm talking to a friend and he says, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free? I said, well, none. They all worry about money. Okay, Chris, well, that's not good. How about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free? Not off the commissions you're earning from your business, but actually from doing these investments. And when I was honest with myself, and I really was thinking about all those different, about 100 people in our office, I realized none of them are free. And he told me, he's like, Chris, that's your problem right there. There's the problem. And guys, that's what got me to kind of going on this journey, just like maybe you are right now, thinking there's got to be something better. Something doesn't feel right. And I knew that as a financial advisor, but when your pocketbook's tied to it, you really don't want to break free. And so I was with this dilemma. I was like, well, do I keep teaching what I teach, just put blinders on, or do I do something different? Do I take a different path that maybe I don't really know how that path is going to go, but maybe it works? Where are people that actually are financially free? Where are those people? Where's the evidence? I wanted the evidence. It wasn't in financial advising. It wasn't in the clients because they're all struggling. Some of them, by the way, I inherited clients and they said, I hope my financial advisor that you inherited me from is dead or in jail because I lost money in Y2K. They blame the advisor for them gambling their money, but if it went up, they would take all the credit, right? So that's how it goes. And so I didn't want to be in that dilemma anymore. And it finally wasn't until a few months later, I was actually at a real estate, seminar type thing I was sitting at, and they started pointing out all this stuff about why the stock market sucks. And if I was had to be honest with myself, I'm like, he's right. This guy up here, making fun of financial advisors is completely correct. And as a result, I actually quit as a financial advisor that weekend, or really the following Monday after that weekend. And I was like, I got to find something different. And guys, this is what I want to talk about today because the key is this. And I talk about my shirt saying I love passive income, right? Cash flow, passive income is the key to freedom. Having more money coming in every month than what you spend is the key. And especially if you don't have to work hard for it. When I talk about passive income, I mean legitimately passive income, money that's working harder for you. Now, there's a few challenges you're dealing with potentially, right? You got the markets that you have no clue what's going on. You got guys, I mentioned like Dave Ramsey, talking about putting $100 a month away. And then he says you'll have 1.176 million after 40 years, making 12%. Here's the problem, guys. He's been saying this forever. Dave Ramsey, this is not new. I'm sure people have pointed this out, yet he's a TV personality that doesn't care about being wrong because guess what? $100 a month for 40 years is $979,000. He was $200,000 off. He wasn't even close to being right. Secondly, here's the other problem, right? You look at the inflation there. I mean, I can hardly see it because it's a little tiny on my screen, but you might be able to see it better than I can. But it's really like piddly, right? It's nothing. But here's the problem. 12% rate of return is not the average of the stock market. So I put in 8%, which is a little bit closer to reality. I'll talk about what reality is here in a second. But close to reality, look, it's only 324,000. So when you put in $100 a month for 40 years, thinking that Dave Ramsey is going to be right and you're going to be a millionaire, and you find out you have 324,000, which by the way, if you look at the after inflation number, it's about 46,000 a year. That's like living on just over, guys. Do the 3% math on that, and you're like, oh, I got $1,300 a year. Wait, $1,300 a year? That's like $100 a month. I'm still living on about $100 a month after 40 years. That's right. That's what happens when you follow that crappy advice. You basically put away 20,000 a year to live on 20,000 a year lifestyle later on. I'll show you what that means with a 401k too, and a match, by the way. Here's what's crazy. There's people that have gotten this advice, right? People are saying like, well, wait a minute, I've taken your advice for years now and I'm still broke. Yeah. I don't know if you can read that or not, but guys, that was something a client sent me saying this was on Instagram. And here's the problem. They're not just saying they went broke following his advice, but now they're asking for more help. They're like, what else can I do? why would you go back to the same people that gave you bad advice in the first place? See, this is my problem with this industry, right? The financial industry, they're always talking about all the things you should do. They're always willing to give you advice. But you know what? They never put their money where their mouth is. They never say, hey, you know what? If I'm wrong, sue me, right? You can't do that. Dave Ramsey's of the world, like they can say whatever they want. The Mad Money, Jim Cramer, he can go and ring bells and break things, almost like Gallagher, but with stocks. I mean, the guy can do crazy things. It doesn't matter. They're entertainment value. They're not real people with real consequences when they give this crappy advice. And we got inflation we got to worry about because they tell you it's 2%, but we know it's all more than that. Not to mention taxes. Where do you think they're going to have to get the money later on? We've been told to stuff our money in IRAs and 401ks for our entire lives. And for what? To be taxed later. Do you think it's possible that maybe the government's counting on this? Maybe literally banking on this, especially as baby boomers have been moving into retirement? They might be, huh? They might be planning this just perfectly to be able to get more money from you than they can right now. That's one of the biggest problems I have. And guys, it's not just about the numbers, right? It's not just about that. This is affecting not just you, but your family. This is creating a legacy of scarcity, isn't it? It's creating a legacy of lack, a legacy of hardship unnecessarily for reasons that are just because we've been uninformed, right? And it's not your fault. The truth is that we've all been brainwashed to believe the same things. I was a financial advisor, brainwashed to believe all this stuff that you've been taught as well. But then I had to, at some point, I had to take that little matrix red pill, right? I had to wake up. And that's what I mean. Cash flow is what really creates freedom. It's not about how much money you accumulate and save like a little squirrel, freaking out because winter's coming. It's not about that. It's about what kind of income can you create right now? Because who's to say you're even going to be alive? Heaven forbid. I hope all of you live to be a ripe old age. But do we even know we're going to be alive to that someday of 30 or 40-year retirement? Even if you're 50 years old right now and you're thinking, well, it might still be another 15 to 20 years. We don't know if we're going to be there. We have no guarantees. All we have is right now. What can we do right now to live that life that we love today with those that we love? Or are we going to procrastinate it and kind of later on be singing cats in the cradle because we went and bypassed it all in the name of just trying to make it another day because you're just trying to work hard. You're surviving. You might even make good income, but still you're just trying to make things work. You're still strapped to that stupid job or that business that you may or may not love for what, right? And so my point is to this, guys, that anybody can do this. It does require a different mentality. It requires you to actually put faith in real results, real numbers, and it requires you to actually do something better. And so who this is not for, if you're the kind of person that says, no, I really love my 401k and I never want to get rid of it. I love my IRAs and I love the stock market, because it's been great to me the last 15 years, even though it's double the average return that it normally is, but I trust it's going to stay really, really high forever. If that's your attitude, this will not work. And you shouldn't even have to keep watching. In fact, I know some of you you're going to be watching on YouTube later, be like, well, Chris, actually the rate of return is this or this. No, you're going to say all kinds of crap. And I don't care because if anybody scrutinized this, I don't know, many people have scrutinized this more than I have, scrutinizing myself. Okay. So if you're not open to that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter. But again, if you're really somebody that says, I think something doesn't feel right. Every time I've heard this stuff, it doesn't quite add up to me. If you're a business owner, you already know this because you already are questioning, the status quo anyways, right? But I'm telling you that this is not it. Now, who this is also not for, if you're really just barely paycheck to paycheck and you have no savings, I'm going to be upfront with you and just say this. I'm going to be honest. If you're looking to create passive income and you have no money, it's not going to be passive. You will not create passive income with no money. And when I mean truly passive income, now people that claim passive income, right? And they'll say, if you create a little side hustle business, come on, that's time and energy. You're investing a lot of time and energy. If you don't have money, you will need to invest time and energy. You will need to generate income so that you have the actual cash to then invest to create passive income. But if you don't have the cash, you're not creating real passive income. You're going to be creating more active income or side hustle income or residual income, depending on the kind of business you're doing. I'm not opposed to that. In fact, make as much income as you want, but know that you're going to have to be more active. You're going to actually put time and energy into it. Don't believe anything you see on social media that says you can just sit around and do nothing and make passive income when you don't have money. Okay. It just does not work that way. So that's my thing. But if that's your situation, if you do not have that money, right? we do have cash flow secrets. I did say, hey, there is something we can offer. We do have cash flow secrets you can find on moneyripples.com. If you're like, especially if you're paycheck to paycheck, or maybe you say, I'm making good money, but where's it all going? Right. And I know Danielle just put that into the side notes here, the comments here. That's moneyripples.com/cash flow hyphen secrets. You go there, you can actually see the course. This is actually where I've taught a lot of clients how to find and free up cash. I'll talk about a little bit of that today. But you'll actually see that course where I go into depth about those strategies, help you find and free up more money so that you have more money to invest. Okay. All right, let's move on to back to passive income and why you need multiple streams of it, because you got to have it, right? And it does require you to have a different mindset. Like I said, I had to take that matrix red pill for me to do something different. And with my situation, I started learning about real estate investing. Now, these guys were more active investors, but I realized I could actually invest with some of these investors. I could actually invest money with them. I could lend money to them, let them do all the work, and then I get paid returns. I could get a rental property. Now, I managed my own property. It wasn't exactly passive. I was doing a little bit on the active side, even though it was very slightly active. But I would get rental properties and do that. This is how I was able to retire when I was 28 because I had streams of income coming in that I would really only spend maybe a couple hours a week working for. That's it. Not 40 plus like I was doing before. By the way, at one point, even a year prior, I was really working like 60 to 80 hours a week to make money. And it felt a lot harder than what I was doing when I was doing it this way. So I'm going to talk about that here as well. Now, stocks versus real estate. I've kind of already alluded to this a little bit, but let's talk about it because this is where that cash flow creating freedom makes a difference. It's not about how much money you have, it's how hard your money's working for you that makes all the difference. Now, everybody's going to tell you the stock market is the best. I did it as a financial advisor. I would show people charts like these saying, well, if you put $1 into the stock market back in 1928, and ever since even before the caveman, if you put the money in the market, you would have billions of dollars, right? I would show that kind of thing. But look at real estate. Yeah, you don't have a few bucks because I'd only look at appreciation, the value of real estate, not the multiple returns I would earn from real estate. So I show them that, and there's other charts I could always show to prove that stocks are better. Why? Because I sold stock investments. That's how I got paid as a financial advisor. And guess how almost every financial advisor gets paid? By selling you stock investments. They are salesmen in suits, just like I was. Okay. That's what all it was. Now, let's look at the actual results. This is now going on exactly 6 years. So I updated this chart here. The market actually came down a little bit today since I actually put this in. So it's not exact, but it's pretty darn close. The market shows a little higher on this chart. But in the last 6 years, the market has actually averaged. This is a true average, not the average that they lie to you about, right? This is actually a true average. The last 6 years has been a 12% return on the stock market. This is one of the biggest obstacles I have today because people say, well, it's 12%. And that's just the way it is. It's that recency bias. Whatever you experience recently, you think that's the way it always is. This is why after the last recession, everybody thought real estate would tank, even after real estate was soaring, right? Because it was that recency bias. Now, very few people have remembered about the stock market crashing into the recession because real estate took the news headlines. And by the way, there was a lot of money lost in the market. In fact, it took in from if you put money in the market in the year 2000, did you know that after you paid fees and such, and I know this because I had clients that actually had this happen in real life, not what the numbers said, but what they actually experienced in real life. In the year 2000, they just left their money in there. It was until 2015 when they got their money back the way it was in the high of 2000. 15 years to make their money back after 2 different recessions of Y2K and the Great Recession. 15 years. And by the way, do you think inflation killed it? Yeah. So really, they lost half their money in 15 years. It took until 2020 plus for them to finally say, oh, now I finally made money again, right? So yes, the last 6 years has been awesome in the stock market, which is why I like to use this example because I'm comparing this to when I bought a property May of exactly 6 years ago, 2018. And this property was in Tennessee. So let's compare what this down payment on the property was $32,000 because that's all I had to put actual money into that property for a down payment. While if I put $32,000 in the market, what would it look like? So $32,000, really, if in the stock market back in May 1st of 2018, you would have almost double that 32 that would become 63,000 or about a 97% return. But guess what that same property did for me? I've now, with appreciation, some of that's appreciation too, and cash flow, 157,000. That's a 390% return on my money, almost 400% versus 100% return. I've made about almost triple what I would have made putting that money in the market. Okay, not quite triple. That's about 2.5 times. Still pretty dang awesome. 2.5 times more in just 6 years. What do you think that might be looking like after 10 years, right? But here's the best part. Remember, it comes back to cash flow. This is it. Here's the income you would actually get. Because remember, if you had $63,000 in the market, the rule is if you pull out money from your retirement accounts, you should not pull out more than 3% a year if you want your money to last. No matter, I shouldn't say no matter what, it could still lose. You could possibly still run out of money because you live too much longer than expected. The markets don't do as well. But usually, with almost all the illustrations they've ran, by the way, the whole 4% rule came from 1974. 1974, that's 50 years ago. That rule is long and gone. That rule is more like a 3% rule. So if you pull out 3% of 63,000 a year, you make about 1,900 bucks a year, 1895 per year. Guys, I know that's not going to make you super excited. Of course, I get that. But I mean, after 6 years, you might say, cool, I made 1,900 bucks a year. But look what I'm making right now. This is updated as of a few months ago. The lease did renew on our rental property. I redid all the numbers after I paid for all the property management fees, after I paid the mortgage payment and taxes and insurance. After all those costs, I net 8,700, almost 8,800 per year. Let me ask you, would you rather have 1,800 a year or 8,700 a year? Okay, that's the difference, guys. See, same money, same start, but it's all about the income that comes from it. Now, obviously, is anybody going to get rich off of this one property? No, of course not. But that's not too shabby for 32,000. You do the math on that, you'd say, "Wow, that worked." By the way, it didn't start out that way. It actually grew incrementally over time because the lease payments would increase with each renewal. But my mortgage payment does not increase. In fact, it rarely does increase. It might increase because of insurance costs and or taxes, but it's very, very minimal over those years. Does that make sense, guys? Type like yeah, I'm with you, or yes if you're still following along with me right now. Just make sure I didn't put you to sleep yet. I know there's a lot more of you that have hopped on a little bit late here. All right. So, what's the real return of the stock market over the last 30 years? It's hard to read this because it's my handwriting. Go figure. CJ, I appreciate you typing in there and following along here. Here's the real return of the stock market. It's been 8.4% for the last 30 years. Notice on the left-hand side, it's hard to see, 1994, that was at the depth of a recession. The depth of a recession, right? Right before it took off. Right now, we're at the height of the market, right? We're at the very height of that market right now. That's the 8.4% average. This is about the best I've seen the average be in probably a decade for the average 30 year, right? By the way, I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Amy, hey, kind of, I appreciate you at least following along because we're going to describe more of this too. All right. So 8.4 has been the actual average up till today when I did this. Now, should be saving a 401k. What about that, right? Because isn't that better? I mean, you get the match. It's free money. By the way, if you're a business owner, you're paying your own match. This is, I don't know. That makes no sense to me, right? Why would I try to get a match on money that I'm going to have to pay taxes on anyways, just so I can save taxes now? You hope that you'll pay less in taxes later, but let's be honest. Has your spending ever really gone down over time? Long term? It never has. But just so you know, the more you pull out in income, guess what? The more you get taxed. Again, don't you think the government knows that you're going to have to pull out more money because of inflation alone? Therefore, the tax brackets, don't you think they realize, oh, I'm probably going to tax them more down the road anyways? Uh-huh. So if you're a business owner paying your own match to then really just get taxed on all that money anyways, not worth it. By the way, a 401k has no tax advantage. You're delaying taxes. You're just not getting taxed today to only get taxed down the road. There is zero tax break with a 401k. Okay, so here's the actual stats. This is from Fidelity. I got this at the end of 2023. Fidelity currently has 45 million account holders out of the entire US. Think about that. This is a large percentage just with Fidelity. There's other companies out there besides Fidelity, but they're one of the largest, if not the largest, 401k provider out there. 45 million account holders. Now, you'd think after many, many decades, the 401k, by the way, started for the average American January 1st, about 1985. Okay, so it's been almost 40 years. You would think we should have a lot of millionaires, wouldn't we? Guess what? 810,000 have $1 million plus. Now, I thought Dave Ramsey said if you save just $100 a month for 40 years, you should have $1 million or more, right? Wrong. You don't. Only 1.8% of people have $1 million. And then of those people that have at least $1 million, Transamerica did a different poll last year, came out in October, saying that 35% said it would take a quote unquote miracle to be able to retire. A miracle. Why do they think it's a miracle? Here's why. I just said it. If you have $1 million in a retirement account, You should only pull out 3% a year so you don't lose to, between inflation, pull out too much if there's market losses and everything else. 3% is all you should be pulling out. 3% of $1 million is how much per year? $30,000 a year. Well, how many of you really think that $30,000 a year is an easy thing to live on nowadays, especially 2,500 a month? It's not very easy. Now, I always get somebody that will put a comment on YouTube's like, either one, they're from some other country, right? Not in America, or two, they're like some single person saying, well, man, you guys are spoiled. I can live on 30,000 a year just fine. I'm debt free. I also don't spend money and my girlfriend doesn't love me anymore, but that's okay. I'm debt free and I can live on 30,000 a year. Well, congratulations. I'm glad that you were able to live on 30,000 a year. Most of us that have lives, most of us that actually have children that sometimes come back home. I have 8 of them. Sorry to say, they're between 8 and 20. They're pretty dang expensive. Even when they empty nest, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have situations. It doesn't mean I don't want to go visit them. It doesn't mean that I might have to travel to go do that, right? All those things these people online will say. It's like, come on. Most of us don't want to live on 30,000 a year. Most people I talk to, and this might be you too, but type in the notes, how much income would you want per year of passive income? Just curious. A lot of people I talk to, it's very common to hear 10,000 a month, 20,000 a month. If they're doctors or dentists, it's usually at least 25 to 30,000 a month, right? Because they want a higher standard of living. But that's pretty common. But it's very common. Now, on the low end, I might see people say, I want 5,000 a month. Great, that's awesome. I actually love seeing those low numbers because it's much easier to attain. But I would say most people probably say like 10,000 a month is pretty common. I got Dr. CJ here saying 300,000 a year. See, I just said it, doctor. And what do they say? 25,000, 30,000 a month. It's not very uncommon, very common. And it's very possible still. So anyways, that's the thing. It's like 2,500 a month, and then you get taxed on that 2,500 a month is not great. That's why 35% think it'll take a miracle to be able to retire. Okay. This reminds me of like Google reviews. Think about it, like only, I said here, 1.8% of people have at least 1 million, and even a third of them don't think they'll be able to retire. So that means really only about 1% of people feel like they can really retire well, right? That honestly feel like they can retire well. Think about that. That's like having a 1-star Google review, like 99 1-star reviews, that one 5-star review from your mom because they decided to give you a nice review, but there's 99 1-star reviews. Would you eat at that restaurant if you saw 99 1-star reviews? No, of course not, right? That's the financial industry. That's the success rate of what financial advisors are doing. By the way, most people saving in 401ks are better than the average Americans in the sense that, and I say better, I don't mean they're better from a holier than thou standpoint. I mean better financially speaking because they have been saving money, where a lot of Americans cannot, even though they want to save, they don't have enough income coming in to be able to save, right? So still you have the more wealthier part of Americans that still, even with the 401k, aren't even getting to $1 million. That should alarm you. That should scare you, right? All right. You probably think of, if I haven't done enough scaring already, check this out. Many people say I get a match on this money. Well, okay, let's look at that. Let's say you have 10,000 you're going in. Let's just say you have 10,000 you're saving into the S&P 500 and you make 8%. Remember I said 8.4 is pretty good. Well, 8% is more reasonable. If you do that for 40 years, that $10,000 a year that you're putting in, you have about $2.787 million. Now, here's what's interesting. People will say, yeah, but I get a 100% match. I do up to the match. Okay, let's go with that. Let's just say that you do put $10,000, but then you add $10,000 a year from your employer, right? So that's $20,000 a year going in. Here's the thing, guys. Fidelity, going back to them, I looked up their performance of some of their target date retirement funds, which are the most popular funds that people pick for retirement. Did you know that it underperformed in the last 10 years over 2% worse? It's about 2.1% worse than the actual stock market average for the last 10 years. Those funds, even though they're supposed to be safe and diversified, did over 2% worse than the market average. On top of that, they had an additional 0.75% for the fee that goes with those too. And just so you know, there's varying fees with 401ks. It could be much more than that. But even if you just put that together, it's roughly about a 3%, almost 3% difference in what you're making. So I went a little bit on the positive side. I was playing devil's advocate against my own point. I put 5.25% because yes, you got the 401k, but remember it underperforms. If it only earns 5.25% because those funds have fees, extra fees, and they don't even make market returns, guess what? 2.7 million. You actually have $90,000 less in retirement with a 100% match than you did just investing on your own. Is that That should disturb you. And by the way, that's not what other people are teaching you, is it? They're all telling you, oh no, the match, easy money, brainless money, do it. But that's not what you should be doing. That's not the point. Who cares if they give you free money if you just put it in a crappy place, right? What if you could do better? And by the way, the left hand side, even though, yes, you could do that in the stock market potentially, right? There's no guarantees there at all. Even if you can still do way better outside of that, as I've already illustrated. Okay. So here's advice I'm going to give you now. Let's get into this passive investing, right? And what's needed. First things first, get lean, right? I always say get lean, get liquid, and then get out. Get lean means this is that if you're looking at your finances right now, start looking for ways that you can cut back without having to cut back joy out of your life. Okay. And usually the easiest way to do that is start tracking your money. Literally just start tracking your money. I had one person that they start doing that as they started tracking their money, and they felt that they were too busy. They were they were an independent, solopreneur. And she's like, I'm just so busy. I got too many projects to work on. I'm like, just start tracking your money. As she did that, we freed up $1,800 a month. Guys, that's 22 grand a year freed up just by her watching her money. Why? Because her subscriptions are paying for, they didn't have to pay for. Heck, how many of you guys have paid for apps that you didn't realize you were getting charged on, right? Monthly memberships and things like that. Even food costs. They were just not planning anything. And so a lot of times they'd either go out to eat a lot or they just buy food that was more like really like our modern day version of TV dinner, so to speak, right? Like the ready-made type food that you pay a lot more for than just using fresh ingredients, right? So funny enough, they actually started eating a little bit healthier, not a ton, a little bit. And they actually got rid of some of the waste that they had in their life. Again, her husband still watches ESPN. He still has his ESPN subscription, right? He still got all that, but they were able to cut back on the things that just didn't really matter to them anymore. They just weren't looking at their money. That's the problem. They weren't watching. So start tracking your money. I recommend at least, if not at least twice a month, look at it weekly. Start watching your money. And just by doing that, you'll find that you'll start freeing up more cash. I'll give you an example here. I had a doctor actually out in Michigan, a chiropractor. And this guy, I mean, he was 62 years old, worked himself to the bone to the point where he now lost all joy out of the profession he loved. Like he loved being a doctor, but he just didn't love it anymore because each year his profitability in his practice went down, down, down. Well, when we started to look at this cash flow and really analyze that, and by the way, we're not even talking about investing, just looking at the cash flow, I said, you know what? We could free up some money. A lot of it we could free up in debt. If we can actually consolidate and we'd have to, pay a little bit out of pocket here. We did that. We took $100,000, paid off some of this debt and even refinanced your house to free up some payments there. We can free up $4,200 a month. That's $50,000 a year. He's like, well, where do we get the 100,000? I said, well, you've got IRA money. You can cash out 100,000 IRA. I'm like, I can't recommend you do it, but that's one easy source you can go to if you need the cash. He said, yeah, but how am I going to retire? That's sacred money. How am I going to retire if I cash out $100,000? And I'm like, well, what's the purpose of retirement? Income, right? Cash flow, income, right? Yeah. Well, doing this will guarantee, based on paying off these loans, we know exactly to the dollar how much you'll free up, as well as the refinance, what we think we can free up. $4,200 a month. That's $50,000 a year from $100,000. Yeah, but how am I going to retire? $50,000 a year from $100,000. That's a 50% rate of return guaranteed because it's all based on debt, not based on gambling in the stock market. But how am I going to retire? Finally, it was his wife said, honey, listen, this makes sense. By the way, it's usually the wives that figure this out first. She's like, this makes sense. Just use the 100,000. You still have 400,000 left in your IRA you can use because he had 500,000 total. Just do it. So he did it, freed up 4,200 a month. He was able to breathe again. Guys, what would it feel like if you freed up 50,000 a year in your life right now? Like you got an instant 50,000 bump of cash flow. Would that feel pretty dang good? I would hope so, right? Well, it did for him too. And so what happened is it breathed a little bit of life back into him and into his business. Because what started happening? He started actually now producing more income and making between 2,000 and 3,000 a month of business just because he was able to relax. He actually, more patients said yes than said no before. So already he was having this bump of income just because he was happier. And people like to work with happy people, especially if you're a doctor, right? And so he started making 30,000 a year there. So already 50,000 plus 30,000 is 80,000. And then we found another $10,000 of tax savings he was overpaying on. So that was 90,000 a year from that 100,000 bucks, right? That's it, guys. That's just from freeing up cash. That has nothing to say anything with the 400,000 he can invest in the IRA. Just by simply improving his cash flow, it changed his life, changed it forever. That's what I mean by that. That's what I mean by get lean. It's not just about being cheap. It's about how can we get our money to work in a way that we can be a wise steward with our money? How can we get rid of these money leaks that sometimes we don't even know are costing us? Now, get liquid. Warren Buffett has been increasing his cash more and more. He's got 167.6 billion just sitting in cash right now, not investing it, letting it sit in cash. Why do we want to be liquid? Because, guys, the more you have liquid, the more you have available to make more money with it. Warren Buffett, because he does a lot of buying companies, sees that there's a lot of companies, and especially what they're charging for those companies. He's like, this is too rich for me. I don't want to buy them. By the way, Warren Buffett doesn't buy stocks. Warren Buffett buys companies. He buys significant ownership in those companies so that he controls those companies. You with your little Apple stock don't have any control. Tim Cook doesn't give a crap about you, okay? He doesn't give a crap. That's why when you buy stocks, you're really just riding waves and gambling. Warren Buffett goes in with a team to make sure that he can get his investment to pay him back. He'll make sure that business is running properly. That's the difference. Now, how do you get liquid? Here's places you can go to find liquid cash, just like we did with this guy. Here's places you can go. Bank savings, obviously, that's kind of an easy one. Life insurance cash value. A lot of people don't realize because they're sold life insurance as being some retirement vehicle, like if it's whole life or index universal life or whatever, right? They're sold that this is a retirement thing. What if we use that cash now to generate income for you? That could be huge. Mutual funds. If you got mutual funds sitting around, not necessarily IRAs or 401ks, or especially not 401ks locked up in your company. That's not liquid, but mutual funds, maybe just normal mutual funds, stocks or bonds, even old 401ks and IRAs. Maybe you have one from a former employer that's just sitting there. Could you do something with that? Yes. Rental properties. Now, what do I mean by rental properties? You might have equity in those properties. I'll talk about that in a second with one of my clients, but you might have equity there that you could be using. That includes home equity. Now, lately, we haven't been encouraging people to really take out home equity lines of credit unless there's some exceptional reason to. But for the most part, we've kind of left that aside, but that is an option. And then things that are like gold, silver, crypto. I had one guy that seriously had over $100,000 sitting in gold, living in Texas. And he's like, I just know that things are going to go crazy. I said, listen, here's the problem. You've got $80,000 of credit cards. If we pay this off, we pay off these credit cards, you'll free up a couple grand a month. Let's do that. I mean, I'm like, I can't recommend anything from an investment side standpoint, but freeing up a couple thousand a month in credit cards would be awesome for you, wouldn't it? He's like, well, I don't know. Like, I really like my gold. I'm like, what if you just sold off some of it and then paid off some of these credit cards? Now you can give them an order of which ones to pay off first, right? It's like, maybe we do it that way. Oh, I don't know. By the way, that gold price, it's actually only now gotten up higher than what it was 10 years ago when we were debating this. What could he have done in the last 10 years with that gold that didn't really go up in price at all? What could he have done with that money to pay off the credit cards? By the way, he did tell me a few years later, he did pay off some of those credit cards with it. He did finally do it. But if he didn't do it at all, I mean, that's a huge loss to him. That's $30,000 a year because it was $2,500 a month you'd free up. $30,000 a year for the last 10 years. That's 300 grand from that, really less than the 100 grand of gold that he could have used, right? That's a big difference. So again, those things, if they just sit around in crypto, by the way, a horrible thing. I mean, if it's hitting new highs, I'm not saying you cash it out, but if you made some money on it, that's a potential source you can now turn somewhere else to make more stable passive income. Now, I had one client like this. He was a Colorado chiropractor. I said, listen, you've got 40,000 credit cards. What if we sell off your condo? He was saving that for his kid, his 12-year-old kid. He's like, when he goes to college, this is going to be his rental property. Now, I love rentals, but I also like cash flow. And I said, well, here's the thing. You pay this off, you'll free up $1,300 a month or $15,600 per year. Yeah, that's net, even after because he was making hardly anything on this property, right? That's net. That's like you make $1,300 a month. That's $15,600 a year. You don't think you could save up some of that money and then buy a better condo later on and then have your son rent it out then? Why not just wait? Yeah, you might get appreciation, but maybe not. We can't count on appreciation all the time. So he's like, I just can't do it. And then at the same time, here's the other problem. He didn't want to get rid of half his staff. He had so many people in his company that weren't doing anything. They were literally not working, but he wanted to pay them to keep them around him to make him feel better. I was like, you've got all these people around you doing nothing half the time. while you and your wife work 80 plus hours a week each. Each of you are working 80 plus hours a week. How are you guys going to stay married at that rate? And so I was like, dude, it's your choice, man. But cash flow is what buys your time back. Focus on that. Okay. You guys follow with me so far? Does this make sense? Good. Because I'm about to get into what we invest in next. And then I'm going to kind of wrap this up. So hopefully you're still hanging in here with me. I see you guys are still here. So obviously you are. All right. So where can you invest next? By the way, here's a screenshot of one of my investments I have right now where it's a partnership in raw land. I do nothing. I'm completely a passive investor financing it. So far, I financed 400,000 of it. It's now paying just over 10,400 per month is what I'm making right now off this. And I'm reinvesting that to make it faster and faster. Cool thing is, I don't know if you can see it or not. Again, it's small on my screen, but if you look at it, the land value between the land that hasn't sold versus the land that has, if it, if you even factor in the retail value of that land, it's actually over 800,000 of value that's paying me that much from 400,000 I invested less than 3 years ago total. So kind of cool. No guarantees. Again, I'm not giving any investment advice, right? Because again, I don't want to throw you off here. Now, here I'm going to start off with this. If you have less than 100,000 bucks, like I said, if you don't have a significant amount of cash, your biggest thing is you probably want to focus on building more cash. I recommend people have at least $150,000 of cash before worrying about these strategies, just because, this would be my preference for me and myself. If I were to talk, even if I were to talk to my own dad, the same thing. I wouldn't want you to be diversified, right? I wouldn't want you to say, here's all this is all the money I've got, and this is just enough to go in this one investment. I wouldn't want you to have to gamble and bank on just one investment going well. Because here's the deal, guys. Even though some people won't say it, there's still risk. Even though I think there's a lot less risk doing real estate because people have accidentally become multimillionaires in real estate, or with stocks, you don't. Some people have become multimillionaires with stocks, but it takes a lot more work and hard work to be able to get there. But with real estate, people have accidentally done it. So I believe there's a little bit more safety into real assets versus fake assets that are just numbers on a computer screen, right? So if you have less than 100,000, I'd recommend watching one of our other master classes about infinite banking. It's a great place to diversify your cash reserves and build it where it's not sitting in a point nothing percent bank account. Now, if you got more than that, especially if you got over 150,000, you want to listen up here, okay? And even if you don't, listen up just to learn what you could do when you have that much, all right? So there's a variety of things you can do. Turnkey rentals, lending. You can actually lend your turnkey rentals, by the way, just to let you define what that is. That's where you have a property manager do it for you. Turnkey rentals, usually there's a turnkey company, and that turnkey company will help you find the properties. You don't have to go searching the MLS, trying to go online and searching for these properties. They find them for you. They even let you know what the numbers are going to be when you get a renter in them within reason. Sometimes the numbers are more or less, depending on what happens. And then they have a property manager, or they are the property manager that manages the property for you. So you get to be hands off. And this also means you can buy anywhere in the country. Because if you're like me, and I know there's several of you here that live on the western half of the United States, guess what? Rentals suck here. They're horrible. I don't like them at all. In fact, I don't buy them. Other than my own house, I don't buy these things because I can make way more money out east in the southeast, the Midwest, right? So that's where a turnkey rental company that's already in that area already knows the area. They already know where to find those properties, can help you find them, and they fill the renters for you. You don't have to find the renters. You don't have to do any of that stuff. They do it for you. Do they charge you a fee? You bet they do. But the cool thing is, like I just showed you with that Tennessee property I had, that's after I pay those fees. It can be awesome. I'll tell you lately though, with turnkey rentals, the returns are not as high yet because the interest rates are higher, right? So the cash flow is not as amazing as it was, say, 2 years ago. But there are still some decent deals out there, depending on the company, especially if they're reputable. So that's not one. I'll talk about, an example of that here in a second. Actually, I'll just talk about it now. How about I do that? I remember I mentioned that about rental real estate and having equity. So one of my clients, Henry here, funny enough, he just emailed me about 2 weeks ago to give me another update. And so if you watched this last month or watched something like this last month, I mentioned Henry before. Well, he just gave me a new update. Okay. But the last, what happened with his situation is he had his house and he had a rental in the state of California. Now, here's the problem. The rental was only netting him $200 a month, but he had $700,000 of equity. If you do the math on the equity, they call it return on equity. If you do the math, making 2,400 a year off of 700,000 of equity. He was making like 0.3% rate of return on his money, 0.3%. And many of you guys are like, I could do a high yield savings account and make more money than that. I could do a CD and make more money than that. And you would be correct. But his thing is, he had that saver mentality. He had those blinders on saying, no, 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 no. You pay off all your debt, you save up everything, and then eventually you're free when you get debt free. Most people fail to realize that even when you're debt free, you still have expenses. There's more in your life than just debt to pay for. And so he kind of lost track of that. So he's like, I'm just going to pay off this loan. I said, well, if you pay off the mortgage, how much money would you be making now? 2,400 a month. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're saying if you spend the next 6 years trying to pay this thing off, you'll only free up another 2,200 a month? 2,400 a month, that's not even 30,000 a year. I said, Henry, what if you did this? What if you took that 700,000 of equity, and even if you made a 10% rate of return by investing in other rentals in somewhere else across the country, and by the way, you can tax-free transfer it over. What if you did that? If you did that, instead of making 200 bucks a month, you could be making like closer to $6,000 a month or 70,000 a year. He's like, oh, I don't think my wife will go for it. I don't know. That's our first property. We really love it. I'm like, yeah, but 200 a month or almost 6,000 a month. Which do you want? Believe it or not, for 2 years, he chose the $200 a month. Finally, 2 years later, he finally said, all right, I'll do it. And so he actually went and he actually sold that property off and transferred it into a bunch of properties down like Louisiana and places like that. He has connections down there. So he didn't use us for the turnkey companies or anything. He went and did his own thing and got 6 rental properties. That has now increased. He's got a 7th one currently. He just updated me. He is now making, guys, get this. This is not the 6th year. This is the 5th year. The 6th year, he's going to pay off that debt to free up another 2,200 a month. He's now, instead of making 2,400 a month after 6 years, after 5 years, he's now making over 100 grand a year in just rental income. That's net profit. 100 grand a year, guys. Huge difference. And so, yes, now he thanks me, but at first he hated me because I kept saying, hey, I can't give you advice, but look at the math here. It makes sense. It's it's kind of a no brainer. Well, some people, they take a little bit longer. Right. And it still paid off for him. That was the good news. So that's a big one. Louis is another person that also did a lot of turnkey rentals. He's been on my podcast, on my Money Ripples podcast. He's about 87% of his goal to be financially independent, where he can pay for his bills. Now he said, if I want to be more free and have a little bit more extra money, he's like, I'm still a little over 50% of the way there. Right. So now I'll go back here again. Now let's go to lending and notes. So lending and notes, you can actually lend your money to investors where they'll pay you a contractual rate, an interest rate, much like you being the bank. Just like when you go to the bank, if you go get a loan or you get a credit card, you're paying them that interest, aren't you? Right. Well, what if the tables turned and you become the bank? You lend the money to the investor. They pay you the interest. What if they pay you 10, 11, or 12% interest for that money? Sometimes it can be more. I did a recent short-term lending option where someone wanted to borrow my money and pay me 15% for the year. And I said, I'll take it. Especially because, I kind of knew what the deal was. I knew the investment he was in. And so I said, I'll give you the money for 3 months. And so I did, got my money back plus my interest that went with it. Right. So you can lend money. When I talk about funds, I don't mean mutual funds. Funds are like where instead of just lending your money to investors, although it could be a lending fund, instead of being tied to maybe one property, like you could do, right, where you could become almost like the bank on a property where you're like the mortgage holder that way, you could also put into a fund where they might have multiple of these deals. Or maybe it's a fund that has, multiple properties in it, and you wouldn't be necessarily a debt fund. It could be an equity fund where you might go in like some of these other things, right? Where some of these funds might buy up multiple things, like they might do lending and notes. They might buy apartment buildings. They might buy some single family or duplexes or fourplexes. They might buy self-storage units. They might buy into these different things, but it's all under a fund. You can kind of, in a sense, diversify a little bit more by being in a alternative investment fund, or, many of them might be syndications as well. Apartments, you can invest in apartments, but here's the great news. The syndications, what a syndication is, you can pool your money with other investors to buy a specific property. So for most of us, we probably don't have enough money to buy an entire apartment complex of like 100 units, not by ourselves. But what if there were other people involved, and then you become certain percentage partner based on however much you contributed? Now you actually have something that works. You have a partnership where you can do that. And that's what a syndication is. You're able to pool your money together with other investors to be able to buy that specific property. That's also true in the self-storage space. The difference between apartments and self-storage, I mean, apartments are one thing, but self-storage, the nice thing is there's not a whole lot of people to pay, right? Because a lot of self-storage, there are no tenants in those units. You have stuff sitting in those units. If people stop paying, you can all, with a click of the button remotely, lock that unit so that they can't get in, right? You can do that and then eventually, throw their stuff out or whatever if you had to. So instead of evicting a person, you evict junk, right? And by the way, just so you know, in a recession, and we aren't quite there yet, right? Even though we kind of show recessionary signs, but in a recession, when people start downsizing more and more, guess where they want to put their junk? In self-storage units, right? I'll just tell you this as a bonus for you guys. Right now, apartments and self-storage haven't been the best. There's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to find the opportunities in this space right now, but that could be a very different story in 6 to 12 months. So just be aware that it's having a little stress. Oil or mineral rights. You can actually own the land that the oil companies rent from. They rent the land from you and pay you royalties for that land. So for anything they pull out of the earth, it could be oil, it could actually be natural gas as well. By the way, natural gas is almost like the steam that comes off the oil, so to speak, right? It's it's the stuff that comes to the top with the oil. You can capture both and make money on both potentially. You can get paid on that. Partnerships. That's like what I talked about with that raw land that we're literally buying raw land at wholesale, selling to people at retail, but then we become the bank. We essentially become the mortgage company where they pay us a monthly payment with interest until they pay us off. That's why less than $400,000 has generated now over $10,000 a month for me in about 2.5 years. So that's where that comes from. So again, I'll show you some of the other examples here. This woman right here, she had 650,000. She did some of those oil investments. She did some debt funds where she was able to get her money to pay her a certain return. She did also another real estate fund, total 76,000 a year. She has just now got to the point where she's financially independent and really at the end of 2023, going into 2024 now. We have this other guy. He actually became financially independent. Took him a long time. It took us to be a long time to find ways to refinance this property, but we were able to get 1.4 million out. Well, some of that went to oil investments that started generating about 100,000 a year, give or take, depending on oil prices. He also got some short-term investments with this money, generating another 32,000 a year. Some of them with that people that we know, some of them that are not. He did another development deal. He also bought, one of the things I said, if you want to diversify a little bit more, there's some turnkey properties. You can go get some real properties as well instead of just lending your money out. Oops. And then of course, some other outside investments he did as well. 232,000 a year. All he wanted was 120,000 a year. So, and this, by the way, this 232,000 is net after paying his mortgage payment. That's net, guys. Huge difference for him. Dan, he's been on my podcast before. He had $1 million in retirement. He put it, some into like apartment investments. He did some things with real estate turnkeys, like a duplex. He also did some things on the oil and gas side. And his million, instead of getting paid 30,000 a year, like his financial advisor actually did tell him, to over 100,000 a year. So this couple right here, they did all the above. We talk about freeing up cash flow and then also investing. They did all the above. $3,800 a month we freed up in loan payments by getting them to refinance. By the way, like very little money out of pocket to do that. We also found that because they're business owners, we could free up about over 30,000 a year of tax savings. So already, you do the math on this, they're already about 75,000 a year. And then I said, hey, look at this rental. And the other coach they worked with too said, well, this rental is not performing very well. You got all this equity, but it's paying you nothing. If you sell that and invest that money, you can make about a net $2,000 a month. So already, guys, between the 75,000 and then the 2,000 a month, which is almost 25,000, they're just roughly about 100,000 a year, even before they invested the money that's sitting in the stock market, right? That's huge right there. So freeing up and improving the cash flow is about 100,000 a year. Plus now they got about $5 million in stocks. Some they've sold off, some they've kept. And so their total potential is 600,000 a year. They're roughly about a couple 100,000 a year between the money that they're making and what they freed up to. So now here's the thing. If you want to, do the long game of saving forever, but maybe you don't want to save forever, you want to just do this in 10 years, you want 100,000 a year cash flow goal. If you have a mutual fund at 7%, start saving today. If you're starting from scratch, start saving almost 20,000 a month. That's roughly just about 240,000 a year for the next 10 years. And then if you make 7%, if the market doesn't shift and then it gets worse, if you make 7%, guess what? You could have enough to have 100,000 a year of cash flow legitimately. If you're investing at 10%, well, okay, the good news is if you're actually making 10%, it's less. It's about 5,000 a month. Here's this, and that's where a lot of our alternative investments are. Most of our alternative investments make at least 10% a year. It can vary a little bit. There can be some less, some more. A lot of them are more too. But I mean, 5,000 a month is definitely a lot more doable to make 100,000 of cash flow a year in 10 years, isn't it? And by the way, if it's 12% a month that you're making, or sorry, 12% a year that you're able to earn off your investments average, then you'll have to save 3,700 a month to hit 100,000 a year in 10 years. That's again starting from zero, from scratch. Many of you already have money to start with. You could possibly do it faster. Just so you know, recently I've been seeing Facebook memories pop up where I was like, this person wanted to retire in 10 years, showed them how to do it in one. That doesn't always happen, right? That's I would say the minority of the time, but it is pretty cool when you can see those kind of situations happen. But I had two of those happen within about a week's period of time, when in just one of those years of the Facebook memories. So here's the big picture, guys. Again, we want to get lean, get liquid, and get it out, right? Use that money. And we talk about max ROI, infinite banking, not the focus, but using that money to cycle through, get that money to then do passive investments and then coming back through. Always constantly reinvest that money to generate more and more cash flow. I call it an income avalanche, right? Because that person, say you have 100,000 that you have to invest in a certain deal, you make 10,000 a year. Well, taking that 10,000 next year, if it makes another 1,000, now that gets you to 11,000 a year the next year. You get that extra 11,000 to invest. And then it gets you to 12,100 bucks a year, right? And you can kind of compound your income by reinvesting that money. I know many of you, some of you are saving more than that, where you might be saving 20,000 a year, maybe because you were putting in a 401k that you just found out sucks. And then you could take that money, add it to whatever you could create in passive income that could generate fast returns, where you could be literally doing a new investment at least once a year, if not more, to keep increasing your income each and every year to the point you become work optional. You work because you want to, not because you have to. All right. So as I said before, you can go and online, you see our passive income calculator on there. You can try out. I'll just end with this and then we'll open up for questions. In fact, if you have questions, start typing them right now. But I'll end with this. I actually saw this on my GPS when I was trying to drive to my bank, and it showed me the one route, which of course takes me 1 minute to get there. Notice it's eco-friendly, by the way. And then the other route. Notice that the other route said it's going to take 24,855 days and 3 hours. And I had to laugh. In fact, it was so unbelievable that it showed up on my map. I had to screenshot it. So I quickly screenshotted it really quick. I pulled over, screenshotted it, and then drove the rest of the way to the bank. But guys, isn't that kind of what it's like when you're listening to financial advisors, that they're telling you to sacrifice, suffer, and save forever, only to what? To then someday, hopefully, maybe, if you have enough to get there. But is it enough? Is it really, truly enough? It's just a long, hard road. You never see people, when they talk about like, oh, how'd they get rich? You never hear someone says, oh, I got rich getting money off my 401k. I saved money in my 401k diligently, got my employer match, and now I'm rich and you can be too. No one says that. No one, right? Because it's not true. It's never been true. The reality is, like I said, less than 1% success rate, right? You can take the long way that's been proven to maybe not work, or you can try a way that maybe is less, it's not less tested necessarily, but it's less taught, because there's not financial advisors making money off this. They don't want you to know about these other investment options because they don't make money when you do. They want you to do the same old crap that hasn't been working for the last decades, just so that hopefully someday you have something. And this just doesn't work. Where I can do this stuff in real estate, and not only does it work for me, like I said, there's many, many other clients that have actually made it work for them, even when it seemed hopeless. And I'll tell you, like, my dad, he's actually about to turn 80 years old in a few months. You know, he worked until his 70s. He worked his tail off until he couldn't work anymore. And he's alive, guys. But he'd probably be one to tell you is like, well, yeah, but I'm alive. But what did I miss out on? What could I have done earlier? And he even told me recently, he says, Chris, like, honestly, I don't even understand your life. Like, you're doing things that I never imagined, that I could do, because I was always so busy trying to work and provide for a family. And he did a great job of it. But he's like, I focus all on that. And then for me, for my time, I didn't really get it. I can guarantee if he could go back in time and do things differently, I can guarantee he would love to get another extra 10 years of his life back. What if you could too? That's the difference, guys. The path has been proven, that the 401ks and IRAs have been proven to work, or not work, really, for that matter. We've already seen that story, and we don't like how that story ends. It's like Goldilocks, Three Bears. Goldilocks dies, guys. Spoiler alert. Here, there's actually hope. Again, there's no guarantees, and you need to have education, but there's actually hope to do it the right way, especially if you have the right knowledge to go with it and you have the right connections to make sure you make the right decisions. That's the key. So, anyways, guys, the most dangerous risk of all is spending your life not doing what you want on the bet that maybe you could buy yourself later that freedom to do it someday. Don't be there, guys. So, all right. I see the questions are coming in. Type in your questions. I know it's I've gone a little past time, but I want to give you really enough meat that you guys can really chew on here. Maybe for some of you too much meat. And then some of you are like, it's dinner time. You don't talk about meat, Chris. Make me hungry. So the first one here, so Amy asked here, she's like, how do I liquidate a 401k? Good question. There's really two options. Well, could be three depending on the situation. If you have a 401k with a current employer, you cannot liquidate the 401k. You can only access it one of two ways. One, if there's an emergency, like an actual financial emergency, you might be able to access it, but that's even questionable. Two is you can borrow from it. Here's the thing, guys: borrowing from a 401k, especially to invest, even the things that I'm talking about doing, I don't really like because they will make you pay it back every single paycheck. You have to pay it back. So if you borrow $50,000, your monthly payments, and they take it out of every paycheck, so split into two, right? But your payments end up being roughly a little over $900 a month, right? So for every $50 you borrow, $55 you borrow, you're paying back at least $1 a month. So be careful because if that means that now you're getting almost $1,000 less out of your paychecks because now you have to do it, I'll tell you, 50,000 making even made 1% a month or 12% a year, that's $500 a year or $500 a month. It doesn't pay your almost $1,000 a month payment. Does that make sense? Like you don't want to borrow from something, even if it's an investment to invest somewhere else, you don't want to do that. So if you're currently employed, your money's kind of locked up. We don't even count that money in the calculator when you do the passive income calculator. But if you have old 401k money or an IRA or something like that, something that's outside your current employment that's not tied up there, now you have options. You could cash it out, but just understand that if you're not 59 and a half years old, you not only will you have to pay taxes, which you're going to do anyways down the road, not only have to pay ordinary income taxes, but you also have a 10% penalty for cashing it out before the age of 59 and a half. And that's assuming that they don't raise the age on you. It's, I don't trust the government necessarily. It may not be obvious, but I'm not government. I know they want to help people, but at the same time, they don't always make the best decisions, do they? Well, what if they decide to change that age from 59 and a half to 62 and a half? And you were 58, just count on that money, and then they bumped it up. Oh, by the way, that happened in France. And there's a lot of people revolting about their retirement because they pushed the age back to try to keep them from going bankrupt because they're too socialist. All right. That's a whole nother story. But anyways, but yes, France is already dealing with this dilemma. What if the US does the same thing and says, well, we're going to push the age back? This is like with the seatbelt laws. Like when I was a kid, I remember I was so excited to hit 5 years old, I didn't have to wear a seatbelt. And then when I turned 6, they said, oh, you have to wear a seatbelt now until you're 16. And then by the time I hit 8 years old, they said, never mind, everybody wear a seatbelt, right? It's the same thing. So be careful. Now, Amy, you also clarified past employer. So this is where it applies to you. You could cash it out, but remember, if you're not 59 and a half, 10% penalty and taxes, or if you are over the age of 59 and a half, just taxes. The other option is this. You could move it into what's called a self-directed IRA. Self-directed IRA just means that you now have the ability to say where it gets invested. Most people, they just transfer an IRA with some other company. It could be like a Fidelity or like, Merrill Lynch, Transamerica type of company, something like that, right? They'll throw it there, but then they're just going to pick mutual funds. But you can actually invest IRA money almost anywhere you want, or 401k, which becomes a self-directed IRA. It's the same rules. You can invest almost anywhere. You can't buy artwork with it. That's one of the things you can't do, right? Or wine collections, you can't buy that, but you can invest almost anywhere, including real estate investments. All the investments I talked about, you could pretty much use. Now, you may or may not want to do it because sometimes you can lose some good tax benefits if you put it inside the IRA, but you can actually invest this money in those places. Some people will say, you know what? I don't really plan on cash flowing this today. Some do want to cash flow it. Some are like, I'm okay just letting it grow. And they may let it actually compound with that investor. So even if they got paid 10%, now it's compounding 10% versus just simple 10% interest rate. So there's a lot of options there for certain. And that is counted. Those monies are counted. I've had some people, even in their 50s, where we've done the math of do you cash it out or not, or just do a self-directed. Sometimes it makes sense to cash it out. Just depends on the opportunity and what you can do with it and how fast you want to create cash flow. So there's definitely an opportunity there if you have that. Let's see. Hugh, Great question. By the way, Hugh, good to see you on here. Hugh actually just recently joined as one of our VIP members, so he gets a lot of this information already. His question is, how quickly do these investments start to pay out? Depends on the investment. Many investments will say they'll pay quarterly. That's very common. So they pay once a quarter. So you might have to wait 3 to 6 months before that first quarterly payment comes out. I've seen even sometimes where, like certain investments, oil and gas, for example, some of them you have to wait 6+ months before you start to see that payout. There's other ones that pay monthly. We just did an operator call actually just a few hours ago for our VIP members. That one pays 1% a month. Again, nothing's guaranteed. I'm not making any promises, right? But they pay 1% a month and they start paying right away. So you get paid the next month. So some pay quickly, some pay a little later. If you buy a turnkey property, you could get rent pretty quickly, but by the time you go through the process of purchasing the property, getting the financing on it, if you're getting a mortgage, and going through that whole process, it might be a couple months before you get your first payout. So it just really depends. But most will pay you on a quarterly basis. That's the most common type of payout you'll see. So for many of our clients, when they start working with us, it might be 3-4 months before they start seeing the first money start to trickle in. But then after it starts to come in, then it starts to really build and build from there. So great question. Other questions you guys have for me? And remember, just so you know, you better type that question fast because it takes probably about a good 30 seconds before it shows up on my end. So, whether you're doing this question through the StreamYard link, through YouTube, or through Facebook, I know you guys are in several different places here. Definitely appreciate that. Now, let me go back, make sure there wasn't any questions earlier. Okay. Yeah. Most of it's you guys chatting with me and answering some of my questions. So, anyways, all right, I'm going to leave it at that. If you have more questions, you can always reach out to us, of course. Here's the thing. I would just say this. If you've got cash and you're wondering what to do with it, right? If you've got cash, go try the passive income calculator, see what you come up with. If it's at least 15,000 bucks, you should really be talking to our team. You should be talking to Natalie and saying, hey, is this legit? Did I fill it out right? By the way, make sure you fill out completely every question. Make sure you fill it out. If you don't fill out completely, it won't give you a good answer, right? It will not be accurate. So be sure to do that. But yeah, fill it out. If it's over 15,000, we should definitely be talking. That's 15,000 that you could be generating in the next year. Guys, here's the thing. Think about this. So many people like that 15,000, that's probably because you have at least 150,000 to invest, right? Many people, they're hoping like maybe if they're lucky, they might make 10% with a financial advisor with 150,000 bucks, right? But again, if you could do better than that, right? And consistently do better than that, and again, that reinvest over and over again, man, it's just awesome because that's where you get that compounding income. And that's something you just don't see. Everybody tries to do it the slow way with compounding interest. If you compound income, it works so much faster. So definitely that's a big thing. Now, if you do not have the cash, I know CJ just asked this question. Great one. The best place to start, you could do the cash flow calculator, but if you don't have cash, it's going to give you like a negative number or a very low number. If that's the case, infinite banking is a great place to start. If you have at least a little bit of cash to start, if you could save at least 5 or 10,000 a year, I would look more into that infinite banking section of our website. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do there. But again, if you've got cash sitting around or cash just locked up in places that maybe could be used elsewhere, then there's definitely some hope for you. There's definitely some things you can do to potentially generate cash flow right now. So anyways, guys, appreciate you tuning in. Okay, you tell I record my podcast too many times. I know you tuned in. You've been here. Appreciate it. Again, if you have questions, you can always reach out to us. moneyripples.com. We got a contact us page. We'll go ahead and, of course, we've got the infinite banking. If you want to look more into that, there's the link for that as well. But guys, let us know how we can serve you. Like that's the big reason why we exist today. Like the reason I'm here is because I don't want anybody else to have to suffer years and years of their life wasted away doing something that just put them on a slow path to nothing or the slow path to barely surviving. I don't want that for you guys. That's why I can't retire. Because every time I hear bad advice from a good Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, it ticks me off. And I realize that I've got a mission that's bigger than just myself. I can live fat and happy just fine on my investments, but I don't. Well, okay, I do, but I don't. The reason I don't just live fat and happy is because I know that I'm put on this earth for more. I believe that God's put us on this earth to do more than just survive or just to take care of our families. Take care of our families is a great, honorable thing, but it's kind of selfish, right? What can you do to help the rest of the world? That's why the company's called Money Ripples. What kind of ripple effect can you create in others' lives that will bless their lives and leave this planet a better place? I'm just hoping that I can contribute my small little part doing this for you guys. So again, if we can support you in any way, shape, or form, reach out to us at moneyripples.com. Make it a great day.